So, Natalie, would you like to introduce yourself and tell everyone at home who you are?
Yeah, I'll try. Yeah. So, hey, hi everyone. Natalie Washington. Yeah, I'm. Where do I start? I suppose. So, like, I do a few things. Basically, typically, well, mostly around the kind of LGBT people in sport angle. So, hence, I've got my trans flag football shirt on. So, this week has been Football v Transphobia's week of action, so I can talk about that a bit. But also, like, I do stuff around sport in general. So, like, work with an organisation called Pride Sports, which is around kind of getting LGBT people physically active and stuff, which we think is really important. I'm a trustee of Trans Pride Brighton. What else? Do a bit of stuff. I've done a bit of stuff with Transmedia Watch in the past. I haven't done much for a while. I just like to do too much. You know the saying about like kind of jack of all trades, master of none? I suppose that's basically me. I do too many things, not very well. And, yeah.
I'm sure you don't do them badly.
I have a day job, and I try to play football as well.
So,
yeah.
so as we had on earlier, Charlie Martin, who knows about car racing, and I know nothing about cars and have zero interest in cars. I have literally the same amount of knowledge and interest in football. So
you're picking your guest well. That's a solid way of doing things.
No, it's interesting to hear about things I don't know about.
That's good. Yeah, exactly. I don't know much about bugs, so if I ever wanted to know about bugs, you'd be my go-to lady. So, but yes, I wanted to be a racing driver when I was growing up, but like Charlie said, like it's kind of it costs quite a lot of money, and I have never really had that amount of money, and nor the kind of probably dedication to go and get it from people so I could do it. So I probably not talent, small little bench for that as well. But yeah, I mean football. So I mean. It's funny actually because I mean, like you were talking earlier about with people about kind of like experiences about growing up as trans and that kind of stuff. I never really was into football when I was young, and the primary reason I got into football was that there's this crazy idea that sports and activities are gendered, and people want you to do your society pushes you to do certain things because you're perceived as or are a certain gender. And I started playing football because like 9-year-old me thought that was probably what I was supposed to do. And I was terrible at it. And I went to like a football camp in the summer holidays, and I won a Fair Play Award at this football camp. And anyone who's done football, I'm not looking at the chat now, but anyone who knows football can say like if you win a Fair Play Award, it means you were shit.
Oh, is it like the "I tried my best" sticker that you get when you come last?
It's very much like an attempt was made in trophy form. So like it's kind of it's not really all that, but I tried and I got better, and maybe I'm now kind of like the second or third worst, but like it's so that's kind of how I got into it. And then like transition stopped because kind of had to like literally legislatively and just did, and then got back into it, and that was how I got involved with all this stuff, which I can go into. But
yeah, that's really cool. So like I think with my own experience of like the metal world, where it's very male dominated, and fighting against the concept that girls can't do it is a big thing. And then separately, my own kind of battle with being trans myself, and thinking, well, this is like a male hobby. Can I still have it? I still want it. This is still me. Do you think that like both of those are mirrored in sort of like your relationship with football?
Yeah, I guess it's a thing because actually, like, so obviously football has this massive thing. I mean, literally, you can go back through the history of football and find the oppression of women in football is really something. Like when you go back to the FA banned women's football because it got too popular.
There's so many things from history where women were achieving something and men just were like, no.
So during the wars, obviously, mostly, it's generalism, but men were often away, and so therefore the football leagues didn't run or ran in a kind of an abridged form. So a lot of people went to watch women's teams, and there was women's factory teams like the Dick Kerr ladies up in Newcastle, I think it was, like a really really popular factory women's teams, and loads of people went to watch. So then when the men came back from the war, they basically stopped women's football because they wanted people to go back and watch men's football so that there could be more money in the game. And the FA didn't really start sanctioning women's football in England again until I think maybe the late 50s at the earliest, but I think the 60s. And so we are where we are now. So World Cups were happening for women that England weren't officially participating in, although we did kind of send teams unofficially back before the FA started properly sanctioning in the UK again. So yeah, interesting diversion, but there's a long history of that kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, football obviously very masculine, and actually even like women's football there's always been a certain perception of women's footballers, which has changed quite a lot recently. But if you go back to like what people used to say about women's footballers in the 90s and stuff like that, it was the sort of derogatory stuff you can imagine that people said about women in sport generally.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, and that's why I find actually sport to be, it's complicated, but I find women's sport anyway particularly to be a particularly untransphobic place. Actually, I haven't had much of problems, just because I think the women who have been involved in sport for any length of time, particularly at a grassroots level, at any level, that doesn't matter, have known what it's like to have their gender policed, and have known what it's like to be kind of basically have the piss taken out of them, or to be
accused of being a man, even.
Yeah, exactly. And there are, and I could name names, but you can guess, some high-profile anti-trans ex-sports women who absolutely, when they were competing, everyone called them a man because of what they looked like, and so you think they should know better, but it seems not.
I think that in my experience, like, I'm not someone who's into sport at all, and honestly my main thing about sport is I've had to learn loads of sport stuff just to argue with shitheads online, which is kind of tedious because it's like learning something you don't really care about. But I mean, I do care that trans people can participate in sport, and that sport is fair, and that women can participate in sport, and that sport is fair for them too. Like, both two groups.
Exactly, and the two are pretty related in a lot of sense.
For sure. And I think that most of, like, when I say most, I mean like 99% of the opposition to trans women, particularly in sport, is just misogyny. It's men can beat women at anything, and you're a man, so you can beat women at anything, therefore it's unfair. And it's why so many, like 3/4 of all arguments about sport and trans people are about UFC or MMA, because they're like, fighting is the ultimate sport, and I could fight any woman. I could beat the strongest woman in the world because I'm just some nerdy shithead behind the computer or whatever. And like, that's the main driver for people. And I think that when you're a sportswoman, you probably encountered that so much, and you realise that there are these men who, as a sportswoman, there's like particularly the professional sportswomen, but any kind of, probably just any sportswoman at all, can beat so many men. For sure, in general, men are stronger and so on, and the world records are much different. But like someone who, like a random woman who just plays football every single weekend, is probably better at football than most men in the country. And they know that because they've been challenged every single time they mention they play football at the pub, whatever. And so when a trans woman says she's going to play and you play with her and you're like, well, I'm better than her because I've played more and I'm a more skilled player and stuff. You don't think that, instantly this man in a dress is going to dominate me. So I don't know. Sorry, I'm kind of like,
no,
you know more about this, but I think
you're absolutely right. I mean, like, men tend to massively overestimate the
full stop.
Well, yes, it's true.
Sorry, any guys in the chat.
They tend to massively overestimate the role that physicality and sort of strength and so on plays in sport. I mean, there's lots of sport where it literally actually really makes bugger all difference, and there's lots of sport where technique is far outweighs the role of strength. Obviously, when you get to elite levels, it's about marginal gains, and that's where it maybe comes into play slightly more. But at the level most people play, it really doesn't matter. And to be honest, again, I play at sort sort of tier 7 or 8 of the football pyramid, and there's 9 tiers to give you an idea. Like in the men's game, there's a lot more, but in the women's game, there are only 9 levels.
So you at the top or at the bottom?
The bottom.
Okay.
Yeah. So you've got like the Women's Super League, and then you've got the Women's Championship, and then it starts to go regional. So that's why they call it pyramid, because it starts narrow with one and then it spreads out. And so once you get to my level, it's county based. So like you can in theory go all the way to the top, but it would take us, for example, 7 years to get to the Women's Super League if we got promoted every season, which obviously isn't going to happen. So we're not exactly high level, but like at the level I see anyway, I find people to be really good. I have had a couple of situations where one opposition a couple of years ago where they were basically gigantic dickheads, basically kicked me off the park, and my manager ended up taking me off after about half an hour, pretty much for my own safety, because I just got elbowed in the head at the corner. I did manage to score in that time, so that kind of took and we won the game. So yeah,
nice. Fuck them.
But they did make me cry, and that was the first time somebody had made me cry. That's kind of there you go. And then I had another. Someone else might have laughed at me. I'm not sure. Might have done a couple of times. I'm not really sure. But to be honest, like in actual football, I don't find I get too many problems. The actual problems I'm noticing, and actually it's interesting that we're having this conversation now in the context of how our media and everything has been for the last few years, because I found recently that I'm getting a lot less out of referees than I used to.
So would you explain that? What do you mean?
So, for example, if I tackle someone now, I find, and this is anecdotal and hard to evidence, but I find I'm more likely to get free kicks given against me. I'm less likely to get free kicks if I get fouled.
Than before you came out?
Than a couple of years ago.
Oh,
so
okay.
Well after I came out. But I think this is part of perhaps what's been going on in the wider society, filtering through to referees. And for context, the vast majority of the referees we have, certainly at my level, perhaps changes at the top level, are men. Which I think is important, because my experience again, and I think yours probably as well, is most people who are against trans women in sport are men, because of the misogyny. Because of the misogyny.
Massively so.
You know, what percentage of people? What percentage of men was it that thought they could take a game off Serena Williams? 25% or something.
If it was more than 0, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, there was a survey, and I think of the men surveyed, 25% thought they could take a game off Serena Williams at tennis. Like, I wouldn't even return a shot. I wouldn't even get a racket to it.
I would pay money to see them fail in front of their friends.
She'd probably just kill me with the power of her serve. It'd be terrifying. I just can't even.
I would like to see, as well, lots of these UFC bros go up against the top UFC women fighters, because it would be so satisfying.
It would be a massacre. It'd be, but yeah, that's it. It's all born out of this misogyny. You hear that phrase so much, don't you? It's like, oh yeah, well I could just say I'm a woman and
go on then.
Win the Olympics, and these men seem to genuinely believe that they could medal in whatever sport if they just picked it up tomorrow and.
I know. So many of them truly, genuinely believe that is the premise to their argument.
Yeah.
I mean, for anyone who hasn't been involved in this argument much, I mean, this isn't hyperbolic. This is literally every single time I talk about sports, someone, cis man, brings up UFC or MMA and just walks in as if they could win it. If they just said, "Oh, I'm a woman," and suddenly it's like, I mean, even if self-ID was the barrier for entry on UFC, which it isn't, they would still get decimated. But specific, like,
me up is how they treat all sports as the same. So,
all sports are just a subset of UFC, don't you know?
My background is long distance running, and
I used to do that.
Exclude the whole kind of trans argument here, and we just deal with cis men and cis women. The longer distance, the smaller as a percentage of time the distance run, it converges.
Well, so the last winner of that ultimate endurance race was a cis woman.
Yeah, so there's a really interesting thing that once you go into ultra marathoning and sort of women actually perform better because essentially women's pain threshold is better. That's as much as they can deduce from the situation. So at that point, it just becomes pain management.
There's lots of theories behind it, and yeah, it is kind of that, and how the kind of physical element kind of wastes away to the kind of psychological element. There is, I think you kind of hit at marathon level where it's not as much physical kind of endurance. A lot of it is psychological.
Yeah.
I've done like 4.5 hour marathons when I've been bored out of my mind, and I'd rather, and it is just kind of like psychological, just keep on going. And there's this really good documentary, I forgot the lady's name, of her kind of journey through ultramarathon called Gaining Traction. It was on Netflix a while ago. Thoroughly recommend it. Really good documentary. But that talks about kind of this narrowing gap between cis men and cis women at that kind of level.
And something that's very interesting to factor in that, like where the gap gets a lot narrower, or even in some cases cis women are beating cis men, is that in, for example, chess, where there is just straight up no physical differences, and I mean, I would say obviously no ability differences, which you can also show with research, there is still a women's league, and there's a lot of evidence to show that women perform worse against men. So, for example, there was some studies showing that if women play against random players, and if they're told they're men, they're less likely to perform well than if they're told they're women, regardless of whether they are men or women. It's just because misogyny is such a huge force in every aspect of life, but in sport, and like possibly even particularly in sport, because of this I could beat any woman at anything kind of attitude that so many men have. And it does affect people. I mean, psyching your opponent out is a part of it. And, you know, that affects across the whole of society. That's part of it. Also, funding is part of it. Free time is part of it. Sorry?
I think that's a big part of it. So
it's a huge part of it.
Sport and grassroots sport, and I'm sure Natalie has a lot to say on this. The money that's put in is so disproportional.
Yeah. Money is the single strongest correlating factor with sporting performance for so many different sports. Yeah.
And at grassroots level, like particularly, I think it's a bit better now, but not long ago. I mean, I played football with women who were basically forced to train in the car park of the football club they trained at before because they didn't want them to be on the pitch cutting out. And this isn't high level football at all. This isn't the kind of people that have nice rolled green pitches that you see on TV or whatever. This is Nowheresville kind of division. So yeah, I mean, funding
Swindon town.
Much lower than that. But I mean, you see this if you just look. People have done studies, haven't they, into kind of like Olympic performance and the amount of money that people have put into it. We just look at British cycling. I'll probably piss someone off in the chat here, but now British cycling have put a lot of money into the sport, and therefore Britain kind of Team GB dominated at cycling for quite a while.
Particularly in 2012.
It's a function of money, yeah. It's a function of money. And rowing as well, they're literally going into schools kind of like trying to find tall people that looked a bit beefy so they could get them into rowing. They never asked me.
I've never done rowing, but I'm tall. That's what I was. But I think it is. It's a huge factor, and it's important for a few reasons. It's important because if women are starting to beat men at long distance running, and we imagine a world without misogyny, which would be amazing, maybe women would trash men at long distance. Maybe there'd be other sports where they were equal. Maybe there'd be other sports where they overtook, because raw physical strength. I mean, so I don't do any sport, and I'm not fit, and I'm really lazy. But something I do is in mosh pits, which is not a sport. I like to describe it as full contact dancing.
It's physical activity, though, right?
It's physical activity.
Sport and physical activity, because not everything has to be a sport. So
yeah, and something I've noticed, and this is quite a strong correlation. I've talked to quite a lot of other people who do a lot of mosh pits. Like you get people who are just like casual moshers who get in for a song. Like I live for the pit. I'll do 7 hours of mosh pits in one day, no problem. But, well, not no problem. I'll get be fucking destroyed afterwards. But something that's really typical.
You have a bee in your knee or something like that. That'd be
a wasp. It was a paper wasp. A European paper wasp. But something that I've noticed is you get these huge hench dubros with arms bigger than our heads and stuff, and they will destroy people in the mosh pit. Like if they push me, I go flying. but they will only ever last 3 songs max, and that'll be it. They'll be burnt out, and you can see them recovering at the edge because when some guy pushes you over, you clock him and you notice.
This is
and
a
then,
metaphor for a lot of things, isn't it? Really.
Yeah. Oh yes. But like.
I can't believe I said that.
But Poppy's got a funny mood on. She's gonna knock my green screen over in a minute. Oh, Poppy, what are you doing? Go away.
Moses can't get in, otherwise he'd be right here.
But she's doing a run around. But yeah, like so often you see this, like these guys, they're so strong they could probably snap me in half. But I'm gonna mosh for like all of the bands tonight, and they're gonna last 3 songs from their favourite band. And there's definitely something here between. I mean, I know nothing about sports science other than what I've had to look up for trans arguments, but strength and endurance aren't the same stat. There are so many different things that humans have, and for sure there is something out there. Is a sport out there. I'm confident that misogyny is the factor that is stopping women from winning, and not
totally
not physical strength.
And in every sport, or in most sports, probably every sport, there is different bodies are valued for different things. Because, again, people have this idea that if you're bigger, stronger, faster, or whatever, you're automatically going to be better. But take football, because it's my area of main expertise, but take football, for example, as recently, the last 10, 15 years, there's been this move towards kind of shorter, sort of players with a lower centre of mass, because you're able to change direction faster. If you look at like Pep Guardiola's great Barcelona team, which is kind of like the definitive football team in certainly men's game in the last 10 to 20 years, lots of tiny players, like one player of 6 foot and above, I think. That's the way the game certainly went for a while, and then maybe it's changed a little bit again now. But in every sport, there's different bodies are valued for different things. And we know that human biology has a massive range anyway. I mean, if you look at women's sports teams generally, even if you were going to exclude trans women from your sample, lots of women's sports have really tall people. I mean, I have saved on my desktop this picture, which whenever you've probably seen it a million times. There's the picture that comes out of the American college basketball team with a trans woman in it, and she's taller than the others. You've probably seen it, right? So I have one.
Oh, they've sent it to me so many times. I know the exact one.
So I have a reply, which I send every time as well, which is 2 women basketball players. One is literally like 1.5 foot taller than the other, because it's just, guess what? People's bodies are different, and it's not a be-all and end-all.
Long distance running has that. The taller you are, the less you perform, because everything above here is kind of dead weight. If you're tall, no. So all the best long distance runners trend towards a lower height.
So this is another ignorant sport moron comment, but I went to the Olympics qualifying for the 2012 Olympics. I don't even know what it's called. The UK is if you win this, you go to the Olympics thing. And I remember we saw loads of, I think it was in Birmingham, we saw loads of races, and they had the sprinters who did 100 metres or whatever, and then the long distance ones, and everyone in between. And I remember when the sprinters coming out, both the men and the women, I was like, my God, they're jacked. The women's arms are huge.
And there's some thighs on these people that are just
insane. But then all of a sudden, I don't know when they're I think it was 800 metres or a kilometre or something. All of a sudden they're wiry, and they're making me look jacked. And I'm oh, okay, there's clearly something here where if you're really made of muscle, you're better at short distance, and if you're not, you're better at
kind of the aerobic versus anaerobic kind of thing.
That's 100% it. So the whole kind of tall thing in running isn't really applicable for short distances, because you're only carrying that extra kind of dead weight for a small distance, and it's all about power. Whereas as soon as you step up to long distance, and I'd probably say 1 kilometre, 2 kilometres is probably kind of the tipping point there. That kind of dead weight over that extra time makes such a difference that height starts to go against you. And there's this whole thing of kind of transphobics thinking there should be this one body that kind of dictates the rules for what specific.
Well, when you think the whole of human biology is a single binary, then there's only 2 different types of body anyway.
Yeah.
but there is a danger here that we over-index on the elite sport conversation, because I think what is important, and this is kind of the area I'm really interested in, is at the grassroots level. Someone said it in the chat earlier, like none of this stuff really should matter.
No,
And
it's
actually,
different game. It's a different game.
A surprising amount of sport at a grassroots level, and certainly an age group level, isn't gendered. So, for example, football. Again, I'm going to use football because I know it most.
It's all right. That's why you're here. Talk about football. I don't mind.
Isn't sort of kids level. It essentially can be mixed up until, I can't remember if it's 16 or 18. And there isn't a rule to say that leagues or anything or teams have to be for any certain gender, because they recognise that it doesn't really matter at that level. It's about participation, it's about fun, it's about learning, it's about development, and it's about getting people a love for the sport and for being involved in a team, physical activity, that kind of stuff. Cricket at a kind of a club level there isn't men's cricket, it's mixed cricket. It's almost entirely men, but it's mixed. And occasionally you will see women playing, and it's not anything unusual. It's just that's how it. Now there are women's leagues as well, because they want to have that as a specific place for women, which is fine. But there isn't a rule to say that women can't participate in what they call men's leagues. So at a grassroots level, it's really about how can people get involved? How can lots of people have a love for a sport, but they don't want to play. Coach, they want to be involved in ministering, they want to be involved in refereeing, umpiring, or whatever. And so that's kind of what I kind of mainly talk about. Not that I'm not interested in the elite sport conversation, but the elite sport conversation has kind of been hijacked, to be honest, by people who have absolutely no interest in sport, transphobes this is, that have identified that it is a really good lever to get society against trans people.
It is. That is mainly, like, I think most of them...
For the reasons we've just described.
Like, it's so easy to show a picture of a trans woman who is 6'8" against a 5'8" basketball player and be like, that's it, that's why I don't support trans people. And people will be like, oh, yeah, that looks... Yeah. I mean, this picture, it looks like... I mean, it's obviously unfair, therefore we should ban them from the entire of life. And... when you don't think about these issues as separate things, it's like, should trans women be considered as women in every single respect, or not considered as women in any respect? And that's just the dichotomy you have. It's the quickest way to win people over. It really is.
Yeah, and this is because if you consider someone a woman in every respect but one, you don't consider them a woman, and it's the same in reverse. And
I mean. That's a sensible social position to hold, but it's not necessarily a mathematical position. I mean,
yes, yeah. But I think groups like Fair Play for Women started getting interested in sport. Like, their name has a kind of a sense of sport about it, but they were never a sports organisation. They aren't a sports organisation. They started getting involved in sport, I remember, about 2017, because they had successfully identified two key tactical things, which is that, one, misogynist men think that they can beat women at everything. We've just had that whole conversation. There was the whole thing about them going to Moss Side and trying to incite violence against trans women, right? Secondly, is that a lot of LGBT, or there's a perception, and it's some truth in it, that a lot of LGBT or trans-specific organisations don't really care about sport because there's no visibility of LGBT or trans people, particularly in sport, so therefore there wouldn't be any pushback. So they thought. What they, I think, underestimated, because they don't know anything about sport, is that actually sport, in my experience, women's sport anyway, isn't anti-trans. Like I said, I've had good experiences. In fact, I've had some very good experiences where I feel like people have gone out of their way to make me feel welcome, probably because they're aware of the wider context. So if anyone's kind of watching and listening, thinking, should I get involved in sport? My recommendation is do it, because honestly, the biggest thing that has reassured me that society isn't universally transphobic is being involved in women's sport, because I've had so many people being good.
Yeah, so I think most runners kind of first. I think the bulk of runners in the UK, their involvement isn't in races where they're going to win medals. It's going to be in parkrun. And I emailed parkrun in my early days of transition saying, look, I've been on estrogen. I've had what should I put my gender as on like the thing? And they're like, whatever you think is best. And they just like whatever you want it to be. And the website has this. Unfortunately, it is a binary of male or female.
They've changed it now, by the way. A
Have
couple of weeks
they?
ago. Yeah, they've changed it.
Fantastic. That's good to hear.
Does it
but I
now
think
have a ternary of male, female, or transgender? Because that's usually
No,
the
it doesn't. No, it doesn't have transgender. I think it says male, female,
other.
I'm going to check
non-binary
this out.
or other. I can't
Non-binary
remember
or
exactly.
other. Wow.
Yeah, I can't remember
I'm quite
exactly,
involved
but it
in
has changed.
volunteering in the local thing, and I until recently was volunteer coordinator for the junior one because the kids like to go. But the kind of like range for times for women and men was kind of like that, and there wasn't that much in it. And I always felt between there like before and since like starting hormone therapy, my time dropped a bit. And it pretty much, they have this thing in running where your score is age graded and by gender. So like your age bracket. And it's pretty much the same, like swapping from before testosterone blockers to now, pretty much the same. It's just the only thing that's changed my gender.
I've heard that running is very much like that. Like there are some sports where it's not so much like that, but running is a very like just straight.
My main running mate back when before transition, she was my first ever marathon. She was like hot on my heels the whole way around, and I did all my training with her, and we were pretty much matched the whole way. And even now, it's the gap is kind of is nothing. That it isn't something that she can have spent like an extra kind of testosterone may have given me the edge, which I've now lost. It wasn't something that she can have overcome just by putting in like a little bit of training. She probably did less training than I did before anyway, so who knows? It's all up in the air.
Yeah, it just makes you realise that, I mean, obviously, you know, men and women, it's just how people are, and that's just how sport is and stuff. But also, when you realise that men get this bonus just from the hormones, it's like, not really working hard, are you, mate? Like, come on. It's not as impressive. Like, oh, wow, you ran a marathon in this time. Like, let me just divide that by, like, whatever percentage it is in order to get it to see what the real time was if you weren't gifted with a booster. But, like...
Oh, yeah, like, I mean, some of it's age, but, like, I used to do a lot of park runs, and I remember, like, I got up, and my park run PB was, like, I got up with a hangover, kind of rolled down there and did like 21:35 or something, which is I thought was pretty fast.
So I've got an amazing story about this. So I've only ever done one park run in my life, and I ran the entire way, but that's a lot more impressive when you consider. So I went to the New Forest for a weekend with my university friends, all of my housemates, all of their +1s, camping, and I just picked that weekend to tell them all that I was trans and I was like coming out. That was my coming out time, which if any of them are watching, I apologise because it probably ruined the entire weekend. But
why would that ruin it? That's
the reason I think it ruined it is because I was very nervous and I brought some whiskey for everyone and I was passing it around and I got totally obliterated, and it turns out not really anyone else was drinking the whiskey, and I drank like 700 mils of whiskey, like the most I've ever drunk in my life. I like absolutely annihilated. And I told them all, like, I was wasted before the sun had even started going down. And then, obviously, they all had loads of questions, and I was, like, trying to tell them stories, but, like, all out of order because I was so drunk. And also, I hadn't practiced on my voice at all at that point, because I hadn't even finished coming out. So I had a very loud voice. I'm an loud person.
I mean, you know, I'm not going to criticise anyone for not practicing their voice, so...
Okay. But, like, I had a very... very, very deep and loud voice before, and people were asking me questions. They slowly going to bed, and it ended up with me and like 3 other people up, and it was like, I don't know, late, the sun had set and stuff, and I was telling them, they were asking me these questions like, you know, oh, so have you always wanted to be a woman? And like, so when you used to have sex, not like really intimate questions. I'm quite.
Well, they're bantering you as well, like when you used to have sex. That's just like rude. Back in the day.
When you used to have sex, which is now like half a decade ago. But anyway, so there was this point where like I was answering this question, someone asked another question, and then just, you know, like when you're camping and you hear someone cough in the next tent, well, they're actually a long way away, but it feels like it's right next to you. This guy's voice just from the next camp, which was several meters away, was like, dead name, geezer, pack it in, no one wants to hear it. Like, it was like, it's 3 a.m, go to bed. And I was like, oh my god, this is so embarrassing. It was so funny. Like, me and the other 3 people who were up were like crying with laughter because this poor guy had obviously like taken the weekend off to take his girlfriend out for like, you know, oh, let's go for a romantic camping trip in the New Forest. And some twat had picked that weekend to come out to all of his best friends as a woman. It was so funny. But anyway, so that was like 3 a.m. I was fucking wrecked. The next day, got up at whenever it was, 6:30 or something. We ran to park run. I ran the whole park run. Didn't even stop. Amazing. Didn't do very well. But that's the only park run I've done, and that's my park run story. So
that's a good one. Yeah, that's good. I think everyone's kind of annoying when they like come out though, aren't they? Like, I think.
Oh yeah.
No, I wasn't.
You're just annoying now, mate.
Sorry.
So you did it backwards.
I was annoying then, before and afterwards, and I don't really know how. I think I was annoying. It was like same as you. Like, I know you were talking about earlier, Kate. Like, I kind of like every single weekend was like, tell somebody else, tell somebody else, tell somebody else. Gets to like you almost have like a sales pitch, and you're just like, yeah.
If you have any questions.
FAQ, here you go.
I didn't do that. I did the kind of Android thing for a while, and then kind of the bit where I flipped. It's just like I kind of expected other people to like, yeah, I'm a woman now, keep up, come on, catch up. This was like months ago, sort of thing. So I didn't really come out like one-to-one with that many people. It was a few key people, and then everyone else I kind of expected just to kind of keep up, and that kind of almost put them. I hate to say it, but it put them on the back foot. So when we were in that situation, we're like, oh yeah, whatever, that's all news. That's all news. We're done with that.
I didn't do that purely because, like, if I know there's the whole thing, like, probably not as prevalent now, it's only a few years ago, it's like people wanting to be on hormones and feminise themselves until there was this quote-unquote male fail. And I didn't do that purely because, like, I'd still be waiting. So, like, it's kind of like, I'm not going to bother because, like, you know.
I didn't do it because I wanted to know it's what I wanted to do. Like, I'm a hypochondriac, and the idea of taking medicine I don't need to is horrifying. So I wanted to know it was right for me beforehand. So I came out 6 months before I started hormones. But also the reason I didn't just tell one person and let the word spread is because I wanted to control it. I wanted to control like the narrative and be like, because I just had this terrible opinion of trans people, and I wanted to be like, I'm sure everyone else thinks trans people are shit too. I want them to learn from me, and I do, like, I don't regret. I put in a horrific amount of effort. Like, the amount of effort I put into arguing now, like, is only like 80% of the amount of effort I put into trying to talk to my friends about it, because I really care. Like, my friends are my life. Like, music, my friends, and my cat is just all I have. So I really just needed to tell everyone in person and have these boring 4-hour conversations until 2 a.m. on a Saturday night.
Solid, it works.
So I'm just arranging the next scenario.
Oh, right, yeah, no.
I think kind of the difference was I was at the point where I'd come out almost a year to the day. I came out as bi before I came out as trans, and at that point I'm like, no, fuck it. I don't care if you think I'm like a gay guy or an effeminate guy or whatever. I don't care anymore. And that was it. And that was kind of maybe my kind of almost your kind of coming out as trans point was my coming out as, yeah, I'm not straight, or at the time I'm not a straight guy. So I kind of didn't really care anymore. So if I was going to wear eyeliner or kind of I was gonna wear BB cream or whatever it was, I was going to do it, and that kind of prepped people for, yeah, I am a pen presenting person of whatever kind of. I did kind of the kind of bi stroke, almost kind of non-binary into trans kind of timeline.
Yeah, I know. I kind of thought about it. Like, I did come out to people before I was definitely going to try. I see at least some closer friends, like 10 or 15 close friends, before I knew I was definitely going to transition. So I kind of trialed some of this stuff, but I just couldn't get over the idea that somebody with my kind of body looked ridiculous. And then again, in like a football context, like I was still playing men's football then, and like I shaved my legs and all kind of this kind of stuff. And so like
Makes you run faster.
Well, I think at my level not, but like we had a training session on some AstroTurf for my old team.
Turf what?
And I got clattered by somebody, went down, like scraped like all the skin off the lower part of my leg, because you know what AstroTurf's like.
You'll get a wasp in there, mate.
Like, yeah, it was, yeah. Well, I should have done. Yeah, that would have. But it was only like the outside leg. It was really horrible. I was off work for 2 days because I couldn't bend my leg. It was like, or put anything on my leg, like trousers or anything. All anyone could comment on was the fact that there was no hair on my legs when I did it. I was like, dying here, guys. Like, blood everywhere. And all you've got is banter about.
She's dying. Gay.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
One person, when I came out, one person said, "Oh yeah, I called that." I was like, "No, you didn't." It's just not, but he was there when that happened. So
Oh, okay, maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
Because we all know that any men who shave their legs are definitely trans women.
Exactly, yeah. That's why it's so prevalent in cycling and swimming.
One of the guys at my work actually shaves his legs, I've noticed, because he does loads of cycling. And I clocked that, like, straight away. I don't know if anyone else has.
A lot of athletes do. A lot of athletes do, because, like, if you're getting, like, regular leg massages and stuff, apparently it's better if you've got no hair on your legs. I mean, I've never really had leg massages, so I don't know. But apparently it is, because I remember some Spanish, like, Primera Liga footballer was out for like 2 weeks recently because he had an infected ingrowing hair on his leg from when he shaved his legs. And
No
I was like,
way.
why does nobody else ever get that problem? Like, what have you done wrong?
Some people do get more ingrowing hairs than other people, because like one of my best friends who's a cis woman. Well, so I don't. So one of my best friends who's a cis woman, like if she shaves her legs or anywhere, even her underarm, she gets ingrowing hairs like every time. So she doesn't want to shave anything now, which is totally cool. But she did at one point in our friendship, and it was an issue for her. And I thought, oh gosh, that's going to be an issue for me. But I just never get them on anything. Like I've never had. I mean, I have had ingrowing hairs, but like so rarely. Which is definitely a bonus.
Yeah, it's nice. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, like. Actually, I've completely lost my train of thought there, so I don't know what I was going to say now. I don't know how we got onto ingrowing hairs. So that seems fairly random.
Ingrowing hairs is one of the factors that trans women has an advantage, which proves that they are men.
There's probably someone who's done some pseudoscience study somewhere that says that trans women get more ingrowing hairs, because...
Therefore, they're more likely to die of ingrowing hair virus.
Yeah. It's something a bit like what was the fair play for women, like the fetus will invade the body like 1,000 cancers.
Oh God! Yeah, fucking hell. Yeah,
that's always important that everyone knows about that tweet whenever they're consulting with a sporting body about like whether trans people should be involved. Everyone needs to be aware of that tweet and make sure that sporting body.
For anyone who doesn't know, it was in the discussion of womb transplants for trans women, and could a trans woman ever potentially give birth or have cesarean, and whoever's in control of the Fair Play for Women Twitter account said something like, with any luck, the fetus would invade the body of the trans woman like 1,000 cancers, sniggers, or evil laugh, or something like that.
Yeah, she's topside.
It's horrific. Like,
it's topside.
It was obviously total bullshit as well. Like, they've got this idea, like, all this stuff with the coronavirus about immune systems. Like, immune system is so complicated. Like, you have no idea how complicated it is. I design computer chips for a living, and my best friend is an immunologist, and she does immunology stuff. She's currently doing a PhD in it, and it just makes computer chips look like easy, like that in comparison to how ridiculously complicated the immune system is. And the anti-trans position, the gender critical position, is that it's just this strict binary, and like women do this and men do this, and that's it. And it's just such a joke that anyone would think that. And especially when they're doing this coronavirus thing, or women giving birth, they hear like, oh, women have a different immune system because your body would treat like a fetus as a parasite, so it would fight it off, but actually it doesn't. And they're like, oh, it's the difference between cis women and trans women, you know, that proves you're a man. But it's like, do you know why this area is an immunoprivileged site? Do you know what causes it? No, because none of the top immunologists do. So what are you talking about? Like, it's probably massively related to hormones. It's potentially related to chromosomes, but we do know that an XY woman has given birth before. It's potentially related to so many different things, and you don't care. It's just nonsense. Sorry, I'm kind of ranting.
Okay.
But,
Right,
yeah.
Fine. Yeah.
Our next potential guest is evading me, so keep talking.
I can fill. What do you need me to talk about?
Sport. Do us a sport, mate. What other sports do you like that aren't rubbish?
What sports do I like? So actually, I think I said before, like I wanted to be a racing driver when I was growing up for like, you know, but Charlie Martin got there first, so which is literally the point.
There can only be one.
But, yeah, there can only be one. Yeah. Oh God, don't get me started on the first thing. Every it's always trans women. Every trans woman wants to be the first of something, and lots of people say I am absolutely not the first trans woman at all.
Yeah,
there
like the Daily Mail, who did an article the other day on the UK's youngest trans woman who was 21, and everyone's like, "What the fuck?"
Oh, yeah.
I mean, definitely the first trans woman to like Pig Kieran's.
Is that so? Is that sourceable?
Yeah. Me.
I'm the first trans woman to name a gritter, probably.
I knew you would bring that up. I should have written that down at the start.
That's the only notable thing. You know, in 50 years' time, when I'm dead and all the turfs say the archaeologists are going to dig me up and say that I'm a man, all that will be remembered of me is that gritter, which would probably also have been forgotten by that point, actually. But yeah.
That's probably how they gender you. So they're like, oh, okay, we've got this kind of skeleton here. It's just like, oh, they're this, but they named a gritter and they were a woman. Must be a woman. So you're sus, mate.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, yeah. It's a fast emerging stereotypical female activity, is naming gritters.
Naming gritters.
Because the first
you need the
time
chromosomes for it.
The first time I came up with that name was 2016, when Oldham Council were doing a competition to name gritters, and I replied to it, and that's when it first went viral. That competition was only open to local schools, of which I'm not a school child.
You
and I never have
identify
been.
as a school.
Well, I mean, I thought about making that joke, but the person who won was a little girl, because she's at school, so she probably wasn't that big, I'm assuming. But
I was big when I was at
I
school.
only know two gritter namers, me and her, and neither of us are men, so I can only assume men are biologically disadvantaged when it comes to naming gritters.
Yeah.
Conclusion.
Fuck you,
From an N of
transphobes.
two.
Prove that wrong. Study, 100% of gritter namers are female, and one of them is a trans
Definitely
woman.
a correlation there.
Yeah, there might. I think when I won, there was another one as well, and I don't know who named that, but I mean,
Well, it's obviously a trans woman.
it must have been
Mm.
because, yeah.
Right, so I have now lined up a different next chatter. So,
Okay.
yeah, I don't want to get rid of you.
No, you're welcome.
We've
to,
had a
because
really
I
good
mean,
chat. It's been great to talk to you. Is there any closing things you would like to say? Is there any questions from the chat? Natalie, what's your favourite board game right now?
That's a good question. Certainly, most of these are my wife's, but I have played most of them. I was really enjoying one she got me for Christmas, actually, called Dominant Species, which is like you play as a specific species, and you have to try and kind of like make your species the dominant one. So by killing other species or by evolving to improve your species adaptability.
Like Spore.
That's really good. Yeah, a little bit like that, but in board game form. That's cool. And then we've got lots of like space war and like economy games.
Have you
like
ever
Twilight
played
Imperium.
Scythe?
God,
Have you ever played Scythe?
Scythe? I don't think so.
I recommend it. It's really good. The premise is it's World War One time in an alternate universe where humans have invented steam-powered mechs, and the
Cool.
whole game is you can battle, but battling's bad for you. And because it's multiple players, if two of you battle, you both kind of lose. So it's all about stalemates. It's really cool.
I think that's one of those games that kind of goes on for hours and hours and hours.
No,
I think
it's
we
not
should
that
get
long.
to
Like
it.
3 hours max.
So we played this recently, and it's like a whole Twilight Imperium. So anyone who knows it's probably quite well known.
Oh yeah, I've heard
It's
that
like
one.
a whole day.
Takes like 12 hours. Well, I'll tell you what takes a whole day is the flipping Battlestar Galactica game. So
yeah,
one
we've
of our
got that too,
friends, one of our friends held like a meetup of trans people, and I arrived, and Natalie and our friend and a couple of other people and your wife and stuff were playing this Battlestar Galactica game, and there was a couple of people sitting in the garden, and it was like the nicest day of the year, and we sat in the garden in the sun enjoying ourselves for hours, and these guys were all in this sweaty room with the curtains pulled, and when they came out, they're like, "Oh, it's such a good game, guys," and we're like, I'm sure it was good. I'm sure it was fun.
It was good. There's lots of like politics in it and stuff.
I'm sure.
But yeah, it wasn't the ideal day for that, wasn't it?
But yeah, anyway, it's been really great to talk to you. Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it on my ridiculous first ever nonsense live stream. And I'm sure I'll talk to you again on one soon.
I used to host one of these type of things, and it was like
Bring it back.
hard. Right, cheerio anyway.
See ya.
Bye bye. Thanks.
Bye bye.